that I got from, these are national questions. So if they're not applicable, just tell me to fuck off. But there's one that said a recommendation across the board from independent, I guess just independent politicians and counties was, is there any benefit to increase the use of special prosecutors in police misconduct investigations?
It's a big question.
Yeah.
I mean, what are you considering misconduct? I mean, if you're talking about,
they're talking about violent altercations, and obviously death is usually, I think that's what they were referring to in this case.
Yeah. And they're talking about that in California, if it hasn't already been instituted, is having a team from the Attorney General's office look into officer-involved fatal incidents. Yeah. We've been, I think it's pretty consistent around California. I think most cities and counties have some sort of a regional protocol. Yeah. For let's say have an incident where, God forbid, one of our officers ends up killing someone in the line of duty for whatever the reason is or the circumstances are. We certainly never want to see that happen, but it does need to be investigated by somebody who has less of a connection with the officer than the people that work in their own department, because the feeling or the optics of bias or lack of transparency and whatnot would certainly look different. But there's a lot of people who are making the argument that's not even far enough. That's not far enough removed. We need somebody at a totally different level. The bottom line is these investigations are highly complex. I mean, We're talking about binders and not little binders of information. When you print it all out, the amount of investigation, the amount of questions that are asked, the amount of evidence, the amount of everything, binders of information, and that eventually, when the investigation is complete, that gets sent to the local district attorney, who reads all of that, maybe does some more follow-up investigation, and then makes a determination on whether or not the officer acted within the law. And that's kind of the big thing now is, are these investigations complete? Are they thorough? Are district attorneys making competent decisions on whether or not to file charges? Bottom line is, when these things happen, it's tragic. Yeah. There's not an officer that I've ever worked with who wants to kill anybody. It's not even a topic, right? I mean, We have to talk about it, but nobody wants to take another person's life. Why would anybody want to do that, right? If you want to do that, you should not be in this line of work. You probably shouldn't.
Well, you should not
be free.
You should be in a mental health mental institution. Yeah, well, that's a good one.
It's a very complex issue. I don't think anything's going to change. The bottom line is, you conduct a complete investigation, and then it goes through a legal process where somebody has to take the facts of that case and apply the law to it and decide whether or not there's been a law broken, whether or not you can prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this officer did something wrong, that they broke the law, basically. Right. Now, parallel to that, there would also be an internal, potentially, if there was an allegation that the officer violated a policy or there was misconduct and what happened, there would be a parallel internal investigation. But those two things are separate, because an internal investigation, the end result of that has to do with your employment, not whether or not you get charged with a crime.
Got it.
Two different things. Okay. The police department is an employer. When we think, just like any employer, doesn't matter if you're a restaurant or a police department, if you have an idea that one of your personnel that works for you has done something wrong within their course of employment, you're going to conduct an investigation, and then you're going to maybe take some action, right? Could be a written reprimand. It could be termination. Anywhere in between, there's a lot of different things, depending on the severity of it, whether or not it's happened before. A lot of different things come into play there. But just remember, those are two totally different things. One is a criminal investigation because somebody died, at the hands of another. And we have to determine how that happened and why that happened and whether or not somebody is criminally liable for that. I'm not talking about civilly liable because that's a completely different thing. We can talk about qualified immunity here in a little bit.
Yeah, that was one of my questions.
Yeah, I saw that on there. So I guess what the point I'm trying to make is that process is still going to take place, whether it's a team from a neighboring agency doing that investigation or a couple different agencies. You might build a team with, in our county, you might have 2 detectives from Petaluma, 3 or 4 from the sheriff's department, 1 from Roanoke Park, and they're all going to work together on the shooting that occurred within the city of Santa Rosa, one of our officers. Same thing if it was a Petaluma officer. It's a multi-agency team that we can put together to kind of make that investigation a little bit more independent. So giving that to somebody at a state agency higher up, I don't know what difference that's going to make. Giving it to a state prosecutor as opposed to a local county prosecutor, I don't know if that's going to make a difference, but the process is the same.